Do I have to start over? Okay, let's take two. Here we go. Good afternoon. I'm City Commissioner Dan Ryan. Welcome to the first Portland Children's Levy Allocation Committee meeting of 2023. I'm joined by committee colleagues, Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson, City Appointed Committee Member Tracy Rossi, and they're both here in person, and it's so wonderful to have you here. City Appointed Business Leader Mitch Horniker, who is traveling, but is listening on his iPhone as they travel. Please drive carefully, and we're glad that you're in the meeting. And our county appointed community member, Felicia Tripp Folsom, is unable to attend today. I am also joined by the Levy staff. We have Erica is in the audience, Joel, John, Meg, Lisa, and Rachel, and Yuxing. Did I get everybody? Okay, that's good. Well, thank you all for joining us either in person or here in the council chambers or via live stream. Before we get started, I'm really excited to let you all know, I know all of the colleagues on the allocation committee are aware of this, but last Wednesday, it was on the 15th of February in the afternoon, we had a wonderful afternoon session that was solely devoted to the Portland Children's Levy. The intention of that meeting was to hear from some of our providers, hear a wonderful, robust report from Director Pellegrino, and also we had some amazing participants. They all were great that showed up and made the case for why investment in Portland Children's Levy is so needed now more than ever. All of us know that are tuned into children and youth, and you see it, especially at the county and in your organization. The impact coming out of COVID is pretty grim. And now more than ever, we need to renew this levy so that we can continue to invest in the children and families of the city of Portland. So it was a unanimous vote, 5-0. It will be on the ballot this May. And stay tuned, and now I'm moving on the agenda. So anyway, thank you all for your support. It was great to connect with all of you during that process and have full support from the allocation committee. Now onto our agenda. First up is let's approve the minutes from December 13th. May I get a motion?
So moved.
It's been motioned by Chair Vega Peterson. Can I get a second?
Second.
And a second by Tracy. This is great. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There's Mitch. See? We heard you, Mitch. All right. Anyone opposed? I would think not. All right, that passes. And now we have time for public comment. We'll, before we get into the rest of the agenda, is there anyone signed up for public comment at the beginning of the meeting?
We do not have anybody signed up for public comment today.
Okay, great. So let's go to the first item. It's a policy change proposal for foster care grants. Grants Manager Joel Bouchard will introduce this policy change proposal. Welcome, Joel. It's a proposal for foster care grants, and you'll introduce the three special guests joining. Take it away, Joel.
Yes. And yeah, so let me just go ahead and first reintroduce myself. My name is Joel Broussard. I've been with the PCL for almost 2 years. Prior to that, though, I worked for child welfare in the state of Oregon for over 21 years. Significant portion of that time, I provide services to youth and families directly in the field, but also in the latter part of my career there, I was an operation and policy analyst here locally in Multnomah County area, as well as at one point I was a statewide trainer for child welfare staff, managers, and community partners. So today we're going to talk about the current foster care eligibility for PCL grantees, why we're looking to make this change, and why people are looking to have this change happen. So, first up, as it stands today, the current foster care program eligibility requirement for anybody who receives services from the PCL foster care program, it requires that there be a child who's currently in foster care or previously has been, right? What we would like to expand it to is to give foster care grantees the capacity to work with any child whose family currently has an open child welfare, child protective services assessment, or an open voluntary case with child welfare, or an open dependency case with child welfare. You can have any one of those situations, and there could be no child in foster care. All right. We'd also like to give foster care grantees the capacity to work with kids who don't have a family that child welfare is having contact with. The most common situation this happens is when child welfare is having contact with immigrant kids or migrant kids and there's no family to be found. Quite often, they do end up in substitute care placements, i.e. Foster care placements, but sometimes kids are doing well, and child welfare does what they can to keep that kiddo where they're at and provide assistance with them without that kiddo ever spending one day in foster care in the state of Oregon. Why are we looking to make this change? Well, from day one, there were lots of foster care grantees who knew me because of my work within child welfare and were asking for this, as well as DHS staff who I have ties to and continue to collaborate with. And easily, on a monthly basis, I've had conversations and continue to have conversations with foster care grantees reaching out to me, trying to get clarity on whether or not they can work with this kiddo they're clearly working with child welfare. Child welfare has concerns. Family wants the services, but they're not able to provide services to them because they don't have a child who's currently in foster care or ever has been. And conversely, DHS would like to refer, said child or to work with a PCO foster care program and cannot because there is not a child in the home that currently is or previously has been in foster care. So that's the big main reason why we're looking to make this change. Second to that, the PCL foster care program was created in 2009. Child welfare has changed a lot in the past 14 years. The biggest example that I can provide is that the number of kids in foster care in the state of Oregon has dropped. In 2019, child welfare was reporting that they had approximately 7,000 youth in foster care on a statewide basis. By the end of 2022, they reported they had little less than 5,000 youth in foster care. Conversely, we are also seeing a downward trend here locally. Local child welfare offices here in Multnomah County have been reporting the number of kids in foster care on a local level to the PCL for several years, and in 2022, there was a 16% in the number of kids in foster care here locally. This continues a 6-year downward trend in the number of kids in foster care in the Multnomah County area. All the while, child welfare staff continue to serve a significant portion of families on a voluntary basis or with an open CPS assessment without a child ever serving one day, or not serving, having one day in foster care. And as such, child welfare practice, another way it's changed, so as such, child welfare has moved to embrace working with these families and trying to offer family preservation services when they're having contact with families that they have concerns about, but not enough to lead to a level rise to result in a removal, but to work with these families hand in hand and to help preserve that family. And the big example that I could provide of that is in the spring of last year, child welfare started a pilot project called the Family Preservation Pilot Project. There's 3 sites in the state of Oregon, one of which here is locally in the inner northeast Portland area. And the whole focus of these pilot project units and program is to work with these kind of families that child welfare is having contact with. There's lots of concerns, but kiddo's not in foster care, never has been in foster care, but they want to offer services to this family to help this family mitigate the concerns or help more effectively deal with the concerns that led to them to get a child welfare assessment. So again, next and last slide. Again, as it stands today, the PCL foster care grantees can only work with youth who currently are in foster care or previously has been. And what we would like to expand the policy for the PCL foster care programs is to give them, for those who want to, give them the capacity to work with any and all youth that child welfare has contact with, regardless of whether or not kids in foster care or previously has been. Any questions?
I don't have any at the moment. Well, I do, but do you have two other people or?
We have 3 presenters today, okay?
I'd
So
rather, I think, listen to all the presenters first.
Okay, sounds great. So the 3 presenters for today, we have 2 foster care grantees and 1 person from DHS. Those are Bryn Council, who's the program director for the Janus Youth Insights Young Parent Program, Jennifer McGowan, who's the supervising attorney for Youth Rights and Justice School Works Program, amongst other things. She does a lot of things over there. And Jessica Ravioli, who has been my main contact, main collaborator, and talking about DHS cases and the families that are being served or hope to be served by PCL foster care programs. So Bryn, if you're still there on Zoom, if you can pop yourself on and do your thing.
Thank you, Joel. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bryn Council. My pronouns are she, her. As Joel mentioned, I am the program director of Insights Young Parent Services. We are one of the largest teen parent serving providers in the country. Thank you for having me today. I'll start by saying we all know the saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and that's what we're talking about today when requesting expansion of the PCL foster care program services to include some of the most vulnerable families before interventions like removal are even considered. This opportunity, often a very short window to provide services to increase things like resilience and build upon support networks and help families have reasonable child development and milestone expectations is pivotal in really making sure that we're mitigating the potential for removal in the first place. And early prevention services really are the vehicle for which to support those efforts. At my organization specifically, we work with young parents who are typically 22 or younger, already have children in the system, and being able to provide prevention services prior to that and provide hands-on coaching is huge in order to make sure that kids don't ever enter that system, right? Also knowing that the opportunities for that hands-on coaching is significantly less once a child is no longer in care, and that children have a right to witness these goals being achieved and these successes by their parents while they're still in home. With the expansion of services to families in question, there's hope. We can do this, right? At our program specifically, we've identified nearly as many adolescent parents within our other programming as there are within the PCL foster care programs currently. And these are youth that could benefit from the expertise and knowledge of our family advocates that are highly trained and highly adept. And we've also identified that 85% of these additional families are families of color, right? So some of the families that we know are often the most overlooked, often the most underserved. So to be able to reach these families and help engage them and increase the opportunities for success is huge. We're really looking forward to the opportunity to try to serve these families and to count them among the successes made possible by the Portland Children's Levy and the funding and its support. We recognize that this is a pretty big ask in terms of eligibility, but we also recognize the huge impact that it will have on the number of youth who actually enter foster care. We thank you for your consideration and your time today.
Jennifer McGowan, please go.
Thank you, Bryn.
You are on mute.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to provide information to the Committee on the Foster Care Policy Change. My name is Jennifer McGowan. I'm a supervising attorney at Youth Rights and Justice. Founded in 1975, Youth Rights and Justice is Oregon's only nonprofit juvenile public defense firm. Each year, we provide holistic, client-centered representation to around 1,000 children, youth, and parents in Oregon's juvenile court system. Our SchoolWorks program is a PCL foster care grant recipient. SchoolWorks provides legal advocacy to ensure that juvenile court-involved children are enrolled in school, are able to attend, are receiving supports to succeed, and are not unfairly excluded due to excessive discipline. The proposed change to the foster care policy to expand and allow grantees to work with families and children at risk of foster care placement, because that's how I see it. This is really looking at that at-risk population, would be a tremendous support to the families we serve and to our community. While foster care can be a necessary intervention, at times, it is expensive and not without significant harm to children and families. Children who spend time in foster care can have worse outcomes in education, employment, income, housing, health, substance abuse, and criminal involvement when compared to their peers in the general population. The ability of foster care grantees to work with families earlier in the process before children have been removed and placed in foster care would allow us to provide necessary interventions and supports to enable families to remain safely together rather than creating additional trauma and harm through removal and placement in foster care. As Joel mentioned earlier, this early intervention work is part of an overall movement in child welfare systems across the country and in Oregon. Oregon DHS's own Vision for Transformation and the Family Preservation Pilot Program's goal of maintaining children safely with their parents whenever possible would be enhanced by the opportunity to partner with service providers. In the school context, being able to serve children who are still in the home with their parents, but struggling with school behavior and stability would allow us to offer our expertise and advocacy to ensure more children are receiving the school services they need. This support would in turn greatly reduce the pressure on families who are often trying to navigate a complicated school process around behavioral and academic needs and supports. When parents are able to count on their children, being in school all day and being served appropriately, this frees them up to address the other needs the family might be facing. Our office started the Family Defense Program in the last year, which is designed to represent families where children are at risk of foster care placement. By providing early intervention, programs like ours across the country are having great success in keeping children safely at home with their families. But a missing piece right now in the support we are able to provide is educational advocacy. Since we are not funded to represent families at risk of foster care placement, these families, many of whom have children struggling in school, have not been able to receive the same services and supports our clients in foster care have been able to obtain. This small change would be a huge benefit to the families who deserve access to these needed services. I really appreciate the committee's attention to this matter and would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Jennifer. Very much appreciate it. Jess Rivioli.
Hi, good afternoon. I just want to say I'm very excited to be here. I am a resource developer for child welfare in Multnomah County. Before I was in this role, I was a caseworker, and so I can share some of I carried that lens of having previous experience of utilizing the Portland Children's Levy services for youth in care or foster care as a caseworker, knowing how so beneficial these services are and what amazing work they can bring to the families we serve. And I have now the lens of serving the whole district, of helping them find resources to use on their cases. I did want to recognize Joel, who's worked so hard in bringing this issue forward. And I'm just really grateful for looking at how to expand these programs potentially to all the families that we serve. So like we've talked about so far, there is a lot of efforts being underway at child welfare to do anything possible to prevent separating families and putting children into foster or resource care. I am on the family preservation team that was shared, and they are really spearheading this effort to do work with families where there's safety threats occurring, but to not bring them into the foster care system. I'm also, like I said, helping the entire district with looking at cases as they're coming in and making recommendations for services to do whatever we can to assist the family at the community level or at the in-home level to prevent children from needing to enter into care. So there's a lot of work being done. And as a result of that, we have taken less and less children into custody, and we're able to keep more families together. I think that if we were able to expand this program's reach to any child that's child welfare involved, it would be mutually beneficial. It would, continue to expand the opportunity for referrals to these programs and would also assist us in our goal of helping families without the intervention of foster care. Looking at different populations in an equity lens, we as child welfare, there's a higher standard when working with Native American families and with refugee families to keep those families in home. And so we're working with those populations where they are at in home and being maintained in their families. And the Portland Children's Levy foster care program does have 2 programs that serve those populations. And so my hope would be to be able to refer more families in those communities to this program so they can so they can also access the important work that is being done. Joel mentioned that we serve families voluntarily. And often I'm seeing families come forward with their child in crisis, and we are assisting them in ways that maybe they're not able to access through the community. And I would love to see us as child welfare be able to bring in Portland Children's Levy programs to assist with those families as well. So I definitely agree that this is a needed expansion. And I think as child welfare, we would greatly benefit from having these services be able to be offered to all of the families we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess.
That's completes the invited testimony?
Yes.
Okay. Before we go in our questions, can I ask, is there anyone signed up for public testimony on this item?
There's not anybody signed up for public testimony.
Okay, thank you. All right. Actually, Mitch let me know that he wanted to do a question, and since he has reception right now, let's.
Sure.
I hope you still have reception. Mitch, are you there?
I am there.
Great.
I am there.
All
Thanks,
right.
Dan.
Yeah. Get away.
Hey, Joel, thanks. Super happy to hear this. Very compelling. But my question is, if we're not serving all of if our programming isn't reaching all of the kids who are currently in foster care within our jurisdictional reach, and we expand this to prevention, which is, just a no-brainer, we're really moving available resources away from people who are actually in foster care to include prevention. And, it's easy to be for that, but I would really like to understand, who are we serving now actually in foster care? Because, and what that reach looks like, and how expansive, what's the eligibility pool in the new defined group, and see how those stars align, because it just feels like we'd want to know that, and because they are, however we're going to define it, foster care eligible or touching the system. I mean, maybe it isn't just foster care money that we're moving around. I mean, these are kids that might fit into other programming areas that we could look at moving money around if, in fact, we feel like we're not reaching the percentage of kids actually in foster care that we want to be reaching right now. So I'm sure you thought about that, and I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Yeah, well, I have a couple of thoughts. First is, I don't necessarily know the numbers off the top of my head of the number of CPS assessments that Multnomah County Child Welfare Offices has done. And the reason why I would look to have that number is because that would give us a good scale of the number of families that could potentially, access these services. And I can tell you anecdotally, when I did productive services referrals, I was easily doing 10 assessments a month. So, and I was one of 20 plus CPS workers. So that's just to give you the scale of numbers, of possibilities of the number of families that could access these kind of services. And two, I can tell you that anecdotally, there's a belief that the Child Abuse Prevention Intervention Services programs was working with these families, and that is true on some scale. When I reached out and asked the CAPI grantees for the fiscal year 22 annual reporting period, they reported of those who had contact with child welfare clients, they reported only about 10 to 15% of their families were child welfare involved. So, and those are the families that are reporting. Not every family is going to report this right off, or it may not even report it at all. But of those families are reporting to those programs. So I think it's something that to be definitely be looked at. I think the third thought that I do want to share is that, again, this expansion of this eligibility would be for those foster carers, grantees that want to. I think the focus still will be for them to provide services to foster care youth or those who previously have been. But I think just this expansion would allow those situations that DHS on one hand or foster care grantee, thinks that these additional services would help preserve that family unit for them before they get into foster care.
Mitch, do you have a follow-up?
No. I'd like to see more data on this to understand what it would mean.
And specifically on what numbers we're talking about that we're expanding to?
Yeah, well, here's the things I'm thinking about. Okay, so we're funding a current grantee and to do work with kids actually in foster care, and it sounds like there is a large need for services to kids that are precariously and families that are struggling and could eventually be facing foster care. So if, I guess I'm just not comfortable thinking that a grantee can just pivot from where they are and focus on prevention, which is a very good thing, but it would also mean that they're not focusing on kids actually in foster care anymore, or they're spreading their resources, and that might be a good thing, but it just feels like, for me, I'd like to understand that better and understand what risk our kids that are in foster care would have in regards to the service level that they currently have. I've always felt like these are the kids that we have failed almost more than any other because these kids are in our custody. And so I want to be very careful about rerouting service dollars away from kids in foster care in our custody towards prevention. I'd like to do both, but I just want to understand what it means.
Thanks, Mitch. I know that Tracy had her hand up, and go ahead, Tracy.
Thank you. I just wanted to piggyback on what Mitch was saying, because it sounds like, based on your numbers, that there's about 5,000 youth in care currently. And while I do understand that we would be expanding who's eligible, I feel like what's going to happen? So what is the plan for the services for youth who are currently receiving those foster care services? Like, what is the resource plan for that? So I too just wanted to agree with my colleague that I feel like I'd want more information about the data there.
Okay. Jessica.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Chair Vega-Peterson.
Yeah, Dan. No, yeah, Chair Ryan. No, I appreciate the presentation, and I really appreciate the information shared with Bryn, Jennifer, and Jessica. The couple of questions I have is, and this might just be for Portland Children's Levy staff, is does the enacting language of the Portland Children's Levy actually allow us to make this kind of expansion to serve these children? Because I thought it was fairly specific around serving children in foster care. So that's kind of my first technical question. And then I think my second question is along the lines of what I heard from the other allocation committee members in terms of the need within the foster care population, our ability to serve those through the grantee programs, and if we're not able to reach all of those children or program grantees are finding they're not able to spend all of the dollars allocated because the population is smaller, then I would say like basically is what's driving this need our inability to spend the dollars that we have targeted for or focused on the foster care population, or is this because we know that there are children who need to be served in different way that don't fall under the category of the foster care, of being in foster care?
No, sorry, I want to make sure that was on. Green light means on? Okay, just checking. So regarding the language, in the foster care is not defined in the ballot measure or in the act that accompanies it currently. So we have always defined it that way, as meaning children in substitute care, because we had heard, I mean, again, this is 2009, so a long time ago now, feedback that this was a population that really needed to be focused on, and the children in substitute care are the ones that folks are measuring for outcomes that you all have seen many, many times, how poor the outcomes are. So we really wanted to focus funding on that group. What we are hearing, so in the presentation, is that that population has been declining. And so if we want to, and because these programs in particular are serving that population, are having regular referral contact with DHS around children involved in foster care, that because that population is declining, there may be others who could benefit from the services that these particular grantees are offering in this program area. Now, as Joel said, some are being served in child abuse prevention. We don't know how many, because in child abuse prevention programs, they aren't necessarily asking that question, nor is the client obligated to tell you, right? So whether they're DHS involved, if you want to use that as a kind of a bigger way to talk about it. So that's what kind of the genesis is. Like, we see declining population, we see grantees asking if they could serve these families, if they have capacity to serve. Kind of what I hear you all saying is you want the priority to be on foster children or children in substitute care. But maybe if there was extra capacity, that would be okay to move in that direction. I'm not sure how we would work that on a practical level, but that's kind of what I feel like I'm hearing you say. Does that resonate or no?
Somewhat. I mean, it's hard to rank. I mean, prevention is very important, but also, are we contributing? Are these efforts contributing to the decline from 7,000 to 5,000 in the first place? So it's hard to put a weight on. Obviously, prevention is important, but also don't want to ignore the kids who are in the system.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, thank you, Chair. I would say that my question is around the capacity issue. It's not on the need. I mean, I feel like, even if it's a case where it's a sibling maybe or something, where these kind of investments would be, helpful for the whole family. But I'm just really curious about the capacity of our grantees to serve this additional population, what that size would look like, and what that does to the overall allocation, right, of these dollars.
Should we ask Bryn or Jennifer to speak to what they believe their capacity would be to add in this group of people to this program area?
I think I'm on the same. Here's what I want to ask
Okay.
you. There's a couple of things, but one is I would like to know a little bit more about the why. I have hunches on why the numbers are lower. I know that case reporting in general went down during COVID because so many of the resources for reporting comes from our teachers and our counselors. And when kids weren't in person learning, that numbers went down. But I'm just hunching on that right now because I didn't hear that. So I wanted a little bit more clarity on that. And I think what all we're saying is, and what I heard from the testimony is that these are really similar kids and families that we're talking about. And that the current way that you were reading the policy is too restrictive to, in fact, work with some of this audience that you think is very similar. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of us are coming from a place of, but we're not serving all of this number yet, and then there's too much ambiguity at the moment, perhaps on what the denominator is of the rest of this number. I don't know if that was fair. Is that fair? Okay. Just a little more context. Now give us what you got, Joel.
Okay.
I'm happy to speak on our program's capacity issues and try to address some of the issues that the council's raised. One is that our numbers have declined in terms of eligible clients for our services. And one of the reasons for that, the primary reason for that, is this placement in foster care or have been in foster care. So we serve a number of families where children are never removed and placed in substitute care. So those children are not eligible under the current PCL rules. And then, as I said, we have a newer program where we're serving clients who are involved in a child protective services assessment, a CPS assessment, but aren't, the children are still at home. And we're seeing a growing number of children remaining in home. And you asked for the why, Commissioner Ryan, and I think there has been some thought that the declining numbers of referrals overall for case assessments was due to the pandemic and children not being in school and not having access to, kind of mandatory reporters. What we're seeing now is an uptick again in newer cases, at least in Multnomah County. That's what I can speak to. But what we're seeing is because of DHS's efforts in transforming kind of their practice and some of their pilot programs, we're seeing a new emphasis, and this isn't unique to Oregon. This is really happening across the country. We're seeing a renewed effort of understanding the significant harm removal causes children and how these prevention-based services can be provided in the home to safely maintain children with their families and not kind of defaulting to removal at the same rate child welfare systems were in the past. So it is this overarching, I think, shift, and maybe Jess can talk a little bit more to that from the DHS perspective, but that's what the trend looks like. But you mix that with the pandemic and we're still trying to figure out the numbers. I mean, it's still hard to know for sure what's going on. What I can tell you is that our numbers have decreased among eligible clients or children we can serve. And I had put those numbers in our most recent reports in the past year or two. We're just not having the same number of children as clients who are in foster care. We're still picking up a number of new child clients who could be eligible for our services, but they are not in foster care. So we would be able to continue to serve all our eligible clients that are in foster care, and that would be our priority, absolutely. What we're looking to do is expand so that we can also meet the needs of these other children that we're seeing who could also benefit from our services. But absolutely, my intent as the program manager would not be to fill up our program with a different population of clients. We would still maintain and accept all eligible clients who are currently in foster care, because I agree that is of primary importance, but it's just how do we use this additional capacity we now find ourselves with to serve the needs of the children who are still at home but in need of these services. I hope that's helpful.
Any other questions? Okay. Are you guys ready to vote on?
Do people want more information? I'm trying to understand, because I know that some people asked for numbers that we don't have ready and handy at this moment. We could get that information to you. I'm not sure. Just maybe make that clear before you want to call for a vote.
Any other questions or concerns before we figure out what our next steps are?
I do think it would be helpful to understand what is the maybe increased population that we would be looking to serve with this expansion, and what's our capacity to serve them based on, the program, the partners. And I guess one last question I've had, is this something that we have conversations about with all of our grantees in the foster care bucket, for this? Are we?
Yes.
So this is an idea that's been shared with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my conversation with them, they have, just like Jennifer McGowan said, their priority would be to continue. Their primary target clients would be, those kiddos who are currently in foster care or previously have been, but they would like to have the capacity, work with these other families that child welfare is having contact with, in which there's no kid in foster care.
And maybe we could clarify that, the policy kind of to state that. So I think maybe that might be another thing that would make people more comfortable, that the priority is to serve all referred clients who are currently in substitute care first, and then if there's excess capacity, to move to serving other families. I mean, it's going to fluctuate over time because people, the service providers don't control that. So they're getting referrals from child welfare on these matters.
I know that there had been a marked effort at the state level to try to keep families together. I think at the time, Oregon had like the first or second highest number of children being separated from their families at some point. So I think the numbers that we're seeing in decrease is a very positive thing, and also obviously has some impacts on how we're able to offer the programs here. So overall I'm in favor of that effort. And I would be more comfortable, I think, if there was that kind of guidance, if there was a way to put that together.
I agree. I think just a
this
little more
is Mitch.
information.
Yeah, go for it,
this
Mitch.
is Mitch. I think the other thing is, I'd like to understand more. I mean, let's just say a 20% decrease in kids in foster care is a somewhat meaningless statistic if we're only serving 10% of the eligible kids in foster care in our jurisdiction. But it's a very relevant statistic if we're serving 90% of the eligible kids. And that's the other half of the equation that I want to understand. And I totally get that it's a complicated world because DHS is involved and assigns out, but I'm still trying to get a handle on what is our coverage in our jurisdiction now before we move to make a change.
And I think we could try to estimate that for you, Mitch.
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, Joel Bouchard, thank you for bringing this to us. I think a lot of us are used to first readings, getting feedback, and then coming back with an updated proposal. I think that's what we're experiencing right now. I think the questions will hopefully improve the process and clarity about the exact problem we're trying to fix, the targets of where we're going, and what impact these investments will have. And I'm sure, hopefully, I know there's a lot of confidentiality and guidelines that you go through, but some more information with data on what percent we're impacting at this moment. And can you go ahead and work with this and then come back at the next meeting? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you'll be able to brief us before the next meeting as well.
Yes, we're going to be having meetings then because it'll be about renewal, et cetera. So we'll just add that to the list.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Bryn, Jennifer, and Jessica for joining us today. We will we'll get this moving along, and we hope that you'll stay close with Joel as we move forward. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to thank you so much. I think we can move on to the next item. Large grant renewal process and timeline. It will be Director Pellegrino will update us on the large grant renewal process. Take it away, Lisa.
Great. Thanks, folks. I want to remind people, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Yushing. Remind people just kind of where we're sitting around renewal, because it's easy to forget all the dates and the times. So the current large grants that were 3-year grants when they started, they all expire on June 30 of 23, so that's coming right up. In the past levy authorization, so the past times that the levy has existed, we've offered 2-year grant renewals after that initial 3-year grant to provide similar services and usually at typically similar funding amounts. It's a no application process, so the grantees just let us know whether or not they're interested in continuing offer the same or similar services and keep moving forward for another 2 years. is typically offered to grants that are on track with performance. Now, admittedly, we've had kind of a crazy 2 years here, so this is a little bit more difficult situation to make that appraisal in. And one of the reasons we do that is because we have had very consistent community feedback in all of the community engagement processes we've done over the years, that stable funding is key to not be moving money around on an annual grant cycle, allows organizations to remain stable and allows organizations to keep the relationships they have in the communities that they're serving. So just a reminder that the 2-year renewal that we would be offering would be contingent, as Commissioner Ryan said at the beginning of the meeting, contingent on the voters choosing to renew the levy in May, because that 2-year grant renewal would be 1 year of the current levy authorization and then the first year of the second authorization. So just have to keep that in mind, that if for some reason that didn't happen, that would jeopardize that second year of funding. Okay, you want to go to the next slide, Yushin? So good news on the updated revenue forecast. We get that in January every year from the city economist, and they are not projecting any decline and a very slight increase in revenues for 23, 24, and 24, 25. So that's great news. So therefore, you know, we're projecting that we have sufficient funds. So that's the revenues combined with the fund balance, because remember we allocated. Well, some of you were here, some of you were not here. Jessica was here when the funds were allocated. So the fund balance that had accrued, we allocated that along with the current year revenues to fund all the current grants. And we project that we would have sufficient funds to continue a similar investment level that we have right now. The way staff is proposing to calculate the base amounts for those renewal grants is to use a figure that's 40% of the original 3-year grant. Okay, and then use, because we have sufficient revenues, projecting to use a 4% compounded COLA that's added to that base amount to create the total for the 2-year grant renewal. Now, that's a lot of numbers, and if you want to give the next slide, I'll try to walk through what that looks like just so you can see in a sample grant what that means. So if in our example here that's up on the slide, for a $500,000 3-year grant award, okay, so that was a 3-year award of $500,000, 40% of that would be $200,000. When we add the 4% compounded COLA for 2 years, the 2-year grant renewal recommendation would be $424,320. So it just gives you a basic outline of how we would calculate our recommendations for grants that we want to recommend to be renewed. Any questions on that before I proceed? I want to make sure that people understand it before I give you a rationale for why. Does that make sense? Okay.
Mitch, you good?
So our sorry, Mitch? No?
Yeah, I am good, although it did come to mind, I think there's a bill at the state legislature talking about really analyzing from bottom up how public money funds nonprofits. And I'm pretty sure I'm right on that. It's either there or somewhere else. And if that's the case, then we probably ought to have eyes on what's going on, because it could impact the way we fund or the amounts we fund.
And that's a state law. Would that affect local municipalities that are offering their funding? I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, I have no idea, but if it turns out that they come up with some best practices that state money, and presumably the counties are at the table and the counties are going to do, we wouldn't want to lag behind better ways to fund these. I think that the issue is something that we've been concerned about for a long time, which is underfunding our grantees, or funding them in a way that makes it harder for them to deliver the services that we're asking them to deliver. So just nothing that needs to be decided today, but just maybe something to look into and see if we want to either participate or have eyes on it.
Okay, yeah, I would be totally interested in following up, and I was unaware of it, Mitch. Thanks for letting us know. Does anyone else know anything about this? Okay, no,
I don't. We could talk to the Office of Government Relations. Could you do that?
Yep, I will follow up with
Mitch,
that.
do you know if it's a Senate bill or a House bill that's been introduced?
I do not remember. Sorry. I'll try to find something. If I can find it, I'll send it to you.
Thanks so much.
Okay. So our rationale in using this method of calculating kind of a recommended amount for grants for renewal, we came up with in part because it would allow all the grantees to be eligible for a COLA because 3-year grant budgets were capped at 40% of the 3-year grant amount. So the budget for the year that the grantees are currently in, so as we sit here, was capped at 40% of the 3-year grant. And that's because, remember, there was underspending and it was uneven, right? So we give you average amounts, but those vary from grant to grant. So we capped all the grants at 40%. So that means that everybody would have their current year budget, right, plus a COLA on top to the extent that they were 40%. And if their budget for this year was lower than 40% of their 3-year grant, they wouldn't be penalized for that. So those, I see puzzled look. Does that make sense? No? No, okay. I just want to make sure that because you were furrowing your brow. And also the other piece is it recognizes that inflation has been considerably higher these last 2 years than they were in the 3 to 5 years previous to that. So it's some recognition that it's costing organizations much more money to deliver this similar set of services, if they can't do it for the same funding amount. So that's kind of, where we were coming from as a staff and how we would make our recommendations. Should I pause there or go into how we'll look at exceptions? Any questions on that? Okay. Next slide on exceptions. So as always, there are unique circumstances in some cases that would cause us to recommend less than that formula we just described to you. And those are typically what we've seen so far. We have not completed our analysis of mid-year data because we don't have it all yet. We're working with grantees to get that all buttoned up. But what we've seen, or what we think are the likely reasons we might recommend less than that amount, would be if there was significant and persistent underspending or significant performance issues. And that is based on, so we sent you all performance reviews for the last year, but keeping in mind that the first 2 years of these grants were during the pandemic. So the regular grant provisions really were not in full force and effect. So we're looking at this year to be some indication, but again, this year is still some level of transition for organizations and how well or how likely they are to meet their goals. So we'll come to you with that information, and we are gonna, go ahead to the next slide, Yisheng. The plan is to the staff steps that we're going to take over the next month and a half are to finish tying up so we understand what spending looks like as of Q2. We know what the aggregate data is on their progress reports, how well are they doing in meeting grant goals for this year. And then we meet with grantees to discuss those results and any performance concerns that we have. And then we would develop our renewal recommendations and send them to the grantees for their review by the end of March. So that's kind of the plan for timing. Grantees would have a chance, go ahead to the next slide. In April, grantees would have a chance then to respond to our recommendations. We would forward those staff recommendations along with the grantee responses to the committee. And then you all would and we do that by the middle of basically a week before you guys would be meeting, before the committee would be meeting. And then you all would come together to make your decisions at the April 18th meeting. Those decisions then have to be reviewed and approved by City Council afterwards before the grants go into effect. So that's the basic outline and timeline. And as I said before, we would meet, staff would meet with you each individually to make sure you're clear and understand kind of where our recommendations are coming from, and in some cases, whatever the deeper issues are with any particular grant or grantee. So any questions or concerns about that as we go forward? We wanted to make sure to run that by you in full before we go forward with that.
I think everyone, thank you for getting through the whole presentation. It really helped when you got to the end. I think your process makes a lot of sense. And it helps to hear that we'll have another chance to have this conversation at the next meeting. Okay.
Yeah. I just want to make sure before we went forward. Any other questions, Mitch?
Yeah, Mitch.
No questions.
Okay.
I think we will rely heavily on the most recent information because things are much more normalized. So we'll have to weight that in a bigger way. Is that correct?
Exactly. That's why we're not coming to you yet, because we're not finished compiling that, but we will have that.
All right.
Okay, no further questions. And
was there any public testimony on this?
There was not any public testimony.
All right. Thanks. I'm supposed to ask, so anytime I forget, you'll tell me. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Annual performance data. It's Meg. Hi, Meg. Assistant Director Meg McElroy.
Yes, thanks so much. Meg McElroy, Assistant Director with the Levy. I use she, her pronouns, and Each year, I have the privilege of presenting our annual performance data to you all, but I recognize it's also a little bit of a long report, so I hope you'll get comfortable, take a deep breath, grab some water. This report covers fiscal year 21-22, so it's July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022, and I'm primarily going to review Levy-wide performance highlights. If you want to look at more specific details on each of our program areas, that is available in an appendix that we provided to you all and that will be posted on our website. A couple of years ago, when we did this presentation with you all, we asked for your feedback on what might make it more enjoyable, and one of the things that you noted to us was that you wanted to hear more of what grantees say themselves about their own accomplishments. So just like we did last year, this presentation is peppered with their specific words. And last year, you may recall that I asked you all to take turns reading the quotes to make it a bit more participatory and interactive, and if you're game for that, I will ask that again. Mitch, I'm sorry that you'll miss out on the chance to read the quotes because you can't see them, but I appreciate that you're still listening to this presentation.
Thanks.
So just a reminder, thank you. Levy has 3 overall goals. They are to prepare children for school, to support their success inside and outside of school, and to eliminate racial and ethnic disparities in children's well-being and their school success. So the data that we'll review is toward those 3 goals. And this data comes to us from the grantees that are funded by the Levy. They prepare these reports annually to us. We take the data that they provide and put it together for you in this presentation. The presentation sections will cover children's access to services, so the number of children and families that are reached by grantees and their demographics, the types of service activities that are provided by grantees, how well children and family participate or attend in the services that are funded through the Levy, the outcomes that occur with children and families, and also demographics of the staff and board of the organizations that receive Levy grants. Thanks, Yusheng. So our first slide, service access, is around the children who were served in 21-22. So depending on the type of service that is funded by the Levy, each grantee sets a goal of the number of children or families that they are trying to reach. And in 21-22, we saw a pretty remarkable step toward recovery from the pandemic. Grantees collectively reached 93% of their goal for the number of people that they wanted to serve. These data and the data I'm about to go over in the next several set of slides are specific to our grants in early childhood, child abuse prevention intervention, foster care, after school, and mentoring, because they all do services that are relationship-based and over time, a little bit different than what our hunger relief programs do. So I'll talk about those separately. For those programs and program areas that didn't quite meet their goals, the biggest impact was, of course, still due to the pandemic. There were staffing vacancies that occurred, and I'm sure you all are familiar with this trend right now, as well as illnesses that occurred for staff. So there were reasons like those that programs could not serve as many children as they projected. I also just want to remind you all that these are goals that they set pre-pandemic. So the fact that they reached 93% of the people they were hoping to serve still during the pandemic is pretty remarkable. After school is the one program area that had some of the most challenges. Those programs kept trying to return to in-person services and did so pretty successfully, but they only reached 81% of the goal for children that they wanted to serve. Again, staffing, illnesses, and vacancies caused cancellations and absences and reduced the overall number of children that could be enrolled in some of those services. Can you please advance the next slide? Thank you. This is a quote from one of our after-school programs, and it illustrates that even though after-school programs may not have reached the total number of children that they planned to serve, they still provided some very important support and connection. And Commissioner Ryan, would you be willing to read this quote?
Yes. Through this pandemic, your program really reached out and held on to my girls, and that has made a huge difference for all of our mental health. Thank you for caring for us. Thank you for dedicating time to helping them improve, and thank you for empowering them.
Thank you. So you heard about sort of the Grantees reached 93% of their goals for the number of children and families they wanted to serve, and here's a little bit more about the demographics of who was served. For the data that was reported by grantees on the children that they served, over 92% of the children are from families with incomes at 185% of the federal poverty level or less. 185% of the federal poverty level is $51,000 a year for a family of four. That is less than half of Portland's median income of $106,000 for a family of four. That is also the threshold that qualifies a child for the free and reduced price lunch program in our schools. Roughly 3/4 of the children who were served by grantee programs identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Over a third reside in homes where the primary language spoken is a language other than English. The largest language group is Spanish speakers, typically 20%, and the others speak one of over 50 languages reported by grantees. In the last few years, we have been trying to support grantees to do a better job collecting data on children's disability status. So when children enroll in services, this is the type of data that are collected by grantees, but many are still not collecting disability status. So 8% of children served were reported to have a disability, but that is reflecting a lot of missing data. Luckily, the Levy has a partnership with Multnomah Educational Service District to look at data around the children who participate in after-school and mentoring programs. And using that partnership, we understand that participants in Levy-funded after-school and mentoring programs who completed a certain amount of service in order for us to collect data on them through our partnership with MESD show that around 20% of those students qualified for special education or a Section 504 plan. So we know that we're reaching more children who have a disability than what our data suggests that come directly from grantees. Could you go on to the next slide? And Commissioner Vega-Peterson, would you be willing to read this one? Oh, I should say, sorry, really quick. This quote comes from one of our small grants fund grantees. That set of grantees has a very specific and intentional focus on building inclusion of children with disabilities into their program. And this quote illustrates how that focus has changed their practice.
This year, we created a form for program site visits that included ADA accessibility, gender-neutral restrooms, and restroom access and paved trails. This site visit form proved to be helpful because we were able to figure out which field trip sites would be inclusive for our youth. At the recommendation of what we learned through the course of this grant, Wayfinder's Camp Registration Portal now asks a variety of questions to the parent guardian pertaining to the use they are registering. These questions help better serve our youth.
Thank you. Thank you, Yixing. So next we'll look at the types of service activity goals that grantees set and participation in those services. So each of our grant agreements holds goals for how much service grantees will offer in their programming, as well as goals around how much they expect participants to attend or complete of the services they provide. So service activity goals might be things like how many group sessions are going to be offered during a year, how many after-school classes, how many home visits. Across our grantees, we saw that 66% of those goals were met. So again, due to the pandemic, there were things like illnesses and staffing vacancies that impacted how much of those services they could provide. But we thought that 66% seemed like a good recovery number. With participation goals, grantees, like I said, they set goals around how much of a service a child or family will complete. It might be something like remaining enrolled in the program for 6 months or completing 12 sessions out of the total 18 that are offered. And we saw that 62% of program participants met those kind of attendance and participation goals. Again, illnesses and other staff vacancies continued to contribute toward what happened with how well programs were able to reach those goals. Can you advance? Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Ryan, you have a question?
With those numbers, do we have it broken down into the areas? Like earlier we
Yes.
heard about foster, early childhood. Do we
We
have it broken down?
Yeah, we do have those. They're in the data appendix that was prepared that goes with this presentation, and I don't have a copy of that with me, but it is absolutely available, broken down by each program area. In fact, every metric that I'm reviewing is broken down by program area.
Okay. I don't have it at my fingertips right now either.
No, that's fine, and I don't either, so,
Oh,
but
Chair
Commissioner
Vega-Peterson
Vega-Peterson does.
So this is by grant area, and then it's racial and ethnic areas.
Translate this right now, do you?
Did you have a specific?
Well,
Thank you, Commissioner.
when I see that it says 62% for overall,
Oh,
I was expecting to see different numbers.
oh, for the presentation? I mean, for the, okay.
Yeah, participation.
These are more demographic information, but there's like.
There's
We're digging.
pages
We
and
don't have
pages,
it
there's
there yet.
pages and pages. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure which page
I
the table, there's a table, there should be a table
Yeah.
that breaks down by program area, the percent
Total part, okay. it's
of the
like-
service
it's right
activity
at the
goal or
beginning.
participation goal met.
So here, this is, so there's a chart in the document that talks about the program areas, the number of participants that was the goal to serve, the number that was actually served, and what percentage of that.
And I recall that. So that's, and those are higher than 62%.
That is, that's the number of people, I think, probably, Commissioner, even further into that report. I'm going to go with like
Oh,
page
is this it?
15 or 18 or 20.
Those are activities.
Yeah, would you be willing to
Yeah.
let Lisa borrow your copy and she could
That's
find the one you're looking for?
42. But that's activities. I think that might even be something different.
Anyway, I will dig into that because just glancing
Happy
at
to.
it again.
Yes.
It could get to some of the questions we had earlier about foster.
Oh, there
care
is definitely
participants.
some of the answers to some of the questions. Well, yeah, some of the information that is in this report will help to start to begin to answer some of the questions that you asked earlier. What's not in there, though, is one of the key questions I heard you all ask was sort of what's the total number of kids locally in Multnomah County who are in subcare, and how does that compare to how many kids the Levy is currently serving in foster care? So there's a missing sort of population piece that we don't have in there. But I'm going to guess that the number of children served in foster care grantees last year was somewhere around 500.
Yeah, mentoring is 47%. After school is 59%. Those are the two lower ones.
For program activities?
No, that's for
Participation? Participation. So that's how much of their service they completed. So
And we're
that-
just, we're hoping because of the data we're seeing, because of the impacts on COVID, we're hoping that at least the last 6 months of this report, there was a trend upwards.
Yes.
'Cause
Some of these data we
the
will.
number was concerning. That's-
Yes,
that it's still at
understood.
Below 70% of pre-pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. This quote comes to us from a foster care grantee, and it illustrates how grantees continue to modify and respond to children, modify their services and respond to children and families' needs. I'll go ahead and read this one. Despite the ongoing COVID risk, ECHO staff recognized families' need for more in-person support, especially for families working toward reunification. They advocated for agency policy to shift to allow them to supervise visits at DHS and in the community again. This shift allowed several new families to engage with much-needed support, and we saw new relationships flourish. We are incredibly proud of staff commitment, resilience, and creativity as they navigate the challenges still facing our community. Thanks, Yuxing. This next quote also comes from a child abuse prevention and intervention grantee, and it also illustrates how grantees' service activities were modified in response to child and family needs. Tracy, would you be willing to read this
I'm
one?
happy to, thank you. From Staff Cares Northwest. This year, the trauma therapy team is proud of expanding our expertise to include service provision and consultation for cases involving the commercial sexual exploitation of children. This information will allow mental health providers to become more adept at identifying and responding to sexually exploited children. Our team is currently developing educational information to help other providers adopt a more collaborative, interdisciplinary model when working with children with this traumatic experience.
Thank you. So now that we've talked a little bit about how many children were served, the demographics of them, what types of activities they participated in, and how well they attended those activities, now we can look at outcomes. Grantees also have in their agreements with us outcome goals that they set. Those goals vary by program model. They're the intensity of the type of service offered and the population they serve. Among the types of programs that we serve that do similar types of work, we are able to aggregate outcome results and talk about the results that occur with groups of children. We'll get into that in just a minute. But what I can tell you is across all of the goals that grantees set for themselves, so there are collectively around 200 outcome goals, they met 71% of those goals despite the pandemic challenges. Some of the goals that weren't met had to do with their ability to complete screenings and assessments with families. For example, in early childhood, it was hard to do parenting assessments in the virtual environment. Can you move to the next slide? Thanks, Yuxing. The next two slides have tables on them that walk through outcome results in each of our program areas. The data are from programs that track similar types of outcomes because they provide similar types of services. For example, in the first line, the table shows that 87% of children met developmental milestones. This data comes from 12 of our programs who track this outcome out of the total of 16 in that program area. There were a total of 354 children who completed a developmental milestone assessment and 283 who were on track. So that's how you can use these tables to see how these outcomes are reported. What this slide shows is that over 85% of either parents or caregivers or children met the different types of outcomes that were tracked in these program areas, whether it was parenting practice goals or increases in safety and stability or child development. Go to the next slide, please. In foster care, after school mentoring, and small grants, the programs tend to track goals related to academics, youth development, and school engagement. And across these program areas, again, you'll see the percent of youth who met the goal based on the total number of programs that track that goal out of the total number of programs in the program area, and the total number of youth who met the outcome out of the total number that were assessed. And again, in this case, you can see that over 90% of youth met outcomes across these program areas. Can you go to the next slide?
This is of those who participated, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who participated and completed a certain
And
amount of,
completed survey,
exactly,
all right.
yes. Which is why some of those numbers become pretty, when you're looking at 44 out of 48 children. This quote comes to us from an early childhood grantee, and it illustrates program staff delight in seeing how families learn and grow as they meet program outcomes. Commissioner Ryan, would you be willing to read this one?
It's from Morrison Child and Family Services. Levy funding makes it possible for me to continue to do what I love, which is support a wonderful team that is passionate about the work that they do with families. I love hearing the stories of when kids reach a challenging milestone, of when moms have an aha moments with their kids, like when they see them do something that they did not think they were capable of.
Thank you. And this next quote comes from one of our mentoring grantees, and it also illustrates how typical outcomes that grantee partners, MPCL, want to track don't always reflect some of the major accomplishments that occur for a child and family in Levy-funded programs. And sometimes those outcomes can't really tell us some of the most important stories. Commissioner Vega-Peterson, would you be willing to read this one?
Sure, this is from the Padrinos Program for Latino Network. We have worked with youth to legally drive by providing driver education classes, get their permit, and consequently obtain their driver's license. We're teaching our youth that doing this the right way always brings positive outcomes. We had a youth who got fees for driving unlicensed and uninsured and a court citation. Our Padrinos coordinator worked with that youth to realize the consequences of their decisions, accountability and prevention, by showing up to court and taking driver's education classes.
Thank you.
And this is meaningful as I have a 15-year-old who is just eligible for their permit this year.
Our hearts go with you. Thanks, Yisheng. So this next slide reflects sort of a different look at outcome data. This is specifically for school-age youth, and this is specifically for youth who participate in our after-school and mentoring program. So we are able to report this data because of our partnership with Multnomah Educational Service District and the way in which PCL grantees cooperate in this effort. So they provide us with participant lists. We provide that information using privacy and confidentiality practices to Multnomah Educational Service District. They then prepare an aggregate report with no client identifying information to tell us about various results that we are interested in, and we share that back with grantees. What this table is showing you is the difference on these 4 outcomes that we look at between pre-pandemic times, that last column labeled 2018-19, and where we were this past year in 21-22. The trends here are not different than are happening across all of Portland area schools, unfortunately. But we did feel like it was important to help to share this information to let you know that we do work with our grantees to look at these data and that we are seeing the same types of trends across the youth that are participating in our programs as what Portland area schools are seeing generally. I also want to point out, for example, like when I look at the attendance one, there were a lot of illnesses, keep in mind, in 21-22. So that one looks pretty bleak, but there were still a lot of people sick with COVID.
That's right. The graduation rate one is pretty hard-hitting as well, and just, I think it shows how the pandemic had such an impact, especially on children and youth who might have had challenges getting graduation anyway, and just that. So these are really important numbers. Thank you for sharing them.
Yep.
Is this big picture, like macro aggregate? It's not just the participants of the Children's Levy?
This is participants of the after-school and mentoring programs and who participated long enough in the program to be measured for outcomes.
Okay.
So these are not all the kids that enrolled in after-school and mentoring programs, but they're, of all the ones who enrolled, the ones who stuck around long enough to be kind of more engaged in the services over time.
Yeah. My curiosity is, with similar demographics, those who aren't participating in these programs,
Great
it
question.
makes me even more depressed to think their numbers would be even lower.
Yep.
Is there a way to get at that? You knew I was going to do this, Lisa.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there is no way, because we are not using identified student data, and we the PCL do not maintain any student database at all. So we have no way to ourselves try to look at the macro data and then screen out the folks who participated in Portland Children's Levy programs. Does that make sense? And so, yes, you could look at this. You could look at, and there is some data points. Again, ODE doesn't necessarily look at all the same data points we look at, right? So they don't report on all of those things, but there is some comparable data in the data appendix that looks at the population in Portland schools. So that's the same school districts that we look at, you know, that kids in PCL programs attend. But that data includes this data. Does that make sense?
It does. We go back. So, of course, at All Hands Raised, we have these kind of conversations.
Exactly.
And so you can't disaggregate a bit with MESD and the school data, but
they would have no way to pull out the PCL program participants. And again, this is not, you know, there are kids
no,
who...
that's what I'm saying. This
Okay.
this is the Portland Children's Levy participants.
Yes, no, but I
Yeah.
mean from the aggregate data that
I
they would
know,
give
but
us.
for
Do you
the-
see what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like, we can look at and that data is in there. So like the attendance data for youth in Portland schools that includes the kids who are counted here, but that data is in the data appendix as well. So we have a couple of comparable data points, but it's not extensive. Because they don't, for instance, ODE doesn't report on behavior referrals for suspension and expulsion. They don't have a statewide or a school-wide basis for that. They don't report it. Same with 9th to 11th grade that earns 6 credits. They don't report that data point. So we don't have a way to make a comparison. It's only for attendance and graduation.
I just had a question about that six credits. Is that on track to graduation? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
You would need 6 credits per year, each year to graduate.
But especially the freshman year, yeah.
Yeah, they track ninth grade, but that's all they track. ODE tracks ninth grade credits attained, but not beyond that. And we're looking for that over time. So, yeah. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah.
Can you move on from the next one, Eugene? Thank you. So now we're going to turn our attention to a different program area, the hunger relief programs. There are 11 programs funded by the Levy in this program area, and they have a variety of services, including weekly emergency food distribution and pickup. They do weekly prepared meals. They provide education in gardens, virtual workshops, cooking kits, nutrition and food equity education. And they served over 17,000 children in fiscal year 21-22 and exceeded their goals considerably. Collectively, they distributed 3.6 million pounds of food, exceeding their goals there by 10%. And they offered the food that they distributed at 56 different community locations, primarily schools and some parks and some affordable housing communities. There were over 200,000 prepared meals delivered to over 1,500 people. And there were over 135 classes and workshops offered primarily virtually, and 1,900 kits provided to children and families for cooking, gardening, and wellness. Across all of the emergency food distributions that occurred, if we added up all of the people who were counted each time a distribution happened, there were over 400,000 people who came either once or multiple times. This quote comes to us from one of our hunger relief grantees. It illustrates the intentionality of culturally specific services in hunger relief, those that address access to culturally relevant emergency food, along with education and food justice. Tracy, would you be willing to read this one?
I'm happy to, thank you. We discussed the importance of decolonizing our diet and embracing the diet of our ancestors. We want our participants to celebrate and feel proud of the Latinx cultures through the activities, recipes, and conversations, talk about the foods our families grew up with, and to discuss the history of where those foods came from. Due to how our society has created the narrative that Latinx foods are not healthy, we emphasize the truth that our Latinx cultures have always known the basics of healthy eating. We discuss how we can return to homegrown foods used by the indigenous people and how they are the heart of the traditional meals we know today.
Thank you. And finally, I have only a few more slides left. This one looks at our community childcare initiative. It's a special initiative that the Levy funds because it actually serves kind of two program areas, after school and early childhood. It provides subsidies to working families with low incomes so that children ages 6 weeks to 12 years can have access to affordable, high-quality childcare. This effort complements the state of Oregon's employment-related daycare subsidy by helping families choose that high-quality care and cover its full costs. The state's subsidy only pays 75% of the market rate of childcare, and the Community Childcare Initiative funded by the Levy provides the provider with the full rate of their costs for care for families who participate in it. It assures that families participating do not pay toward their childcare. This is for families who are income eligible at up to 250% of the federal poverty level. So again, for reference, that's $69,000 for a family of four. And again, that's still well below our median income of $106,000 for a family of four. The Community Child Care Initiative exceeded its goal as well. It intends to serve 200 children a year. It served 317. Over half of them identify as a child of color. And there were 57 different providers participating in this initiative out of the hundreds in Multnomah County. A couple of other interesting pieces to note: the monthly median income of families who participated in CCI was $2,790 a month. Their monthly median childcare costs were $1,500. The state contributed approximately a median of $1,000 toward their childcare, and the Levy-funded CCI contributed over $500 as a monthly median. Thank you, Yisheng. This quote comes from staff at the Community Child Care Initiative, and it illustrates the unique challenges facing our child care provider sector this year and in the pandemic over the last few years and their operations. Commissioner Vega-Peterson, would you like to read this one?
This is from the Community Child Care Initiative, Child Care Resource and Referral of Multnomah County. Many of the larger child care provider programs were not and still are not open to capacity due to lack of qualified staff. Many owners and directors are still spending much of their time in the classroom due to not enough staff. One mid-sized center closed for that reason. Many providers have been working on their business plans and have worked out cost per child figures and have increased rates accordingly.
Thank you. And this is my last slide. This looks at the demographics of clients, staff, and board members at the organizations that receive levy funds. In 2019, when we held our community engagement process in advance of our current round of funding, we heard from community that one of their biggest priorities was that the levy money go toward organizations that are committed to serving children and families who are most affected by racial and ethnic disparities and outcomes, that the staff who provide those services at the organizations reflect the clients that they serve, and that the organizations are led by the people who also reflect the cultural backgrounds of the clients that they serve. So we collect this data from our from PCL organization grantees, and from the 42 who provided the information out of the 51 who received levy grants, 64% had majority Black, Indigenous, and people of color clients. 52% of organizations had majority Black, Indigenous, and people of color direct service staff. 57% had majority Black, Indigenous, and people of color management staff. And 38% had majority Black, Indigenous, and people of color boards of directors. The 9 organizations that did not submit, or that weren't included in this data are 4 that provided incomplete data. We provide grants to 3 school districts and community colleges. We excluded their data because the numbers are so large it would have skewed the results. One of our grantee organizations that operates statewide, its total number of clients is nearly double the number of clients served in all other organizations, so we didn't include their data here. And then one organization's grant ended before the fiscal year was completed, so we didn't ask them to report these data. So just keep in mind, this is all clients served at an organization, all their staff, all their board members. So this is trying to get a sense for sort of the organizations as a whole, not just the levy-funded participants.
I see why you pulled out the school districts, but it would still be interesting to see them in a
Yeah.
separate category. And what was the first one that you pulled out? What was the reason?
They're
Didn't catch it.
community colleges. I said there were school
Oh,
districts,
the
community
first one
colleges.
was community colleges?
There are 4 organizations that provided incomplete data, so we couldn't really put them into the aggregation that we did here. Then there were a couple of school districts and a community college that we chose to exclude. And then there's one organization that it serves clients statewide, and the total number of clients they serve is nearly double the number of clients that were served in the aggregate by all of the other organizations that reported data to us. So it would have been an enormous skewing.
When they give
result.
back incomplete data, how does the staff work with them so that isn't the case going forward? Because this would jeopardize them getting funding, right, in the future?
This particular report, we are working with them as best we can, but we didn't necessarily say that this report would jeopardize their funding. This was the second year that we've asked people to provide this report to us, and keeping in mind that we're in a pandemic. So we're trying to balance as a staff sort of like which reports are the most important, which reports allow us to say the kinds of things that we need to say to demonstrate accountability. And because this was a rather new report in the last 2 years, and we're trying to honor people's stress and workloads, we didn't necessarily make this one a high stakes.
Yeah. I think most funders are asking those questions, so it's fair.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks.
I'm happy to take questions. That was a lot, and thank you.
I feel like we've been asking a lot of questions along the way, so I really appreciate this information.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I
appreciate it.
agree. It was, there's nothing you did wrong. It's just more of a transparent dialogue about what's going on. And it was a little bit depressing to see it once again of the impact that COVID's had on our children and youth. It's pretty grim. And I don't think it's getting enough attention. So I appreciate that you had such clear information. Yeah.
Thanks.
But on a hopeful note, I do think it's wonderful that we do have the Portland Children's Levy here to be able to do that resource, to be able to be flexible with our grantees so that they were able to serve the children in the way they best need, be able to get food to the people that needed them. And I mean, especially for me with those the childcare community initiative, that is such a critical thing because we know childcare was such a pain point for so many families during COVID as well. And to see that had made a difference, especially where the gaps of the state are, was great. So I don't want us to be on too much of a downer note.
No, I don't think it's a downer. I think it's important to be honest about the impacts. And I think it makes the case on why this program, which is very disciplined and focused and has impact, is so important to reinvest in. I do have a question about, we talk about the children and youth and their participation since COVID, returning to school in person. Do we have any information on our nonprofits of those and how they're engaging? Are they back into in-person service? So I'd like to know that flip side to it.
Absolutely, and any of my colleagues can come up and join me, but I would say that, the report I just went over, fiscal year 21-22, the return to in-person was very slow, and people were doing it hesitantly. But based on the mid-year reports that we're receiving so far, I would say, in our conversations with grantees over the summer as well, I would say most programs are back to those who wanted to be fully operational in person because it made sense to be doing so, like after-school programs, are doing so. Those that could still provide virtual options, like early childhood home visiting programs, are offering people the opportunity to do either virtual or in person. And so they're kind of they're following the lead of families in many cases, but most of the programs that were designed to be in person prior to the pandemic have now returned back to being in person. I'm getting nods that I did all right. Anything else?
Okay.
There's one quick last update.
Thank you, Meg.
I think you're good with me? Okay.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Thank you, Meg.
I think that was our last item, correct? Oh, community council update, I'm so sorry. And I even went to that first meeting, it was so wonderful.
Hello, everyone.
Good to see you, Rachel.
Good to see you, too. Nice to see you in person. Hello, Mitch. I'm happy to be sitting in front of you today to share with you that the Community Council did convene on Friday, February 10th at New Song Community Center Church, or New Song Community Center. The council met in person and it was streamed by Open Signal for members of the public to be able to view. Council members were able to attend a nice breakfast where they were able to fellowship with PCL staff as well as one another and get to know one another informally. Look, it was great because 10 out of the 12 council members were able to attend. The agenda really focused on three main things, which was just building trust with one another through introductory activities, developing group agreements that will really shape and create the energy for the space as they go through this process, and then be able to describe PCL, its key components, and their role in the community council, as well as the role of the community council in future funding processes. That being said, the council members received a great and warm welcome from Commissioner Ryan, chair of the PCL's Allocation Committee, to start the meeting, and then moved into the agenda, which included dynamic activities. The activity that we did for this first meeting was called Finding Common Bonds. So they were able to find out more about one another and things that they all had in common, while also like learning each other's names. That being said, we moved into our next thing, which was just like the group agreement, so brainstorming. They worked collaboratively. Again, we tried to incorporate popular education methods, so we did a Think, Pair, Share activity where they were able to work in small groups and then come back together as a larger group. Then we segued into an activity called PCL 101, so where they were really able to learn about the levy, its structure, its results, and the work that is done here at the levy. The meeting concluded with a reflection activity where members gave feedback on how the meeting went, and that was really nice because they will be meeting again soon in March. They will also meet in May and September as well as November of this year. Future meetings will really just focus on learning about the PCL and how the new community engagement process will be shaped, as well as learning about the PCL's past funding processes. Council will develop questions and advise on methods that will result in the community engagement plan result in the community engagement plans and recommendations for you all as members of the allocation committee. So yes, are there any questions?
Any questions from my colleagues? You just covered it all, and it was really a pleasure to be there. It felt really good when I left. I was thinking, you're going to have a great meeting.
It was really
People
nice
were
having you
excited
there.
to be there.
Thank you for taking
Yeah.
the time to do that.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Yeah.
So, yes, thank you all.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Our next meeting will be on April 18th. Agendas will be sent to the Levy email list, shared on our Facebook page, and posted at portlandchildrenslevy.org. We welcome your participation. If you'd like to join for the next meeting to comment on agenda items or the work of the levy, please visit the site at portlandchildrenslevy.org or join our email list. Have a wonderful evening. This meeting is adjourned.